Hey RATBAGGERS, it's Jade. Welcome. Today as I discuss an announcement by Conan Exiles talking about their plans for 2025, and while to me and in my opinion it really is going to signify the death of this game, and I'm not angry or sad about that. I think Conan Exiles has had its time in the sun, and for sure they should just focus on new projects rather than trying to keep this game on life support. There is a lot of development costs and a lot of stuff needed to really keep this game going. It was never meant to be a live service, as the game devs admit themselves, but they have treated it as such. With the flop of adding microtransactions and battle passes to it a couple years ago, it seems like that wasn't enough to milk the cash cows to keep this game going, and they do look like they're going to wind things up with a big quality of life update. And then I reckon they will start announcing plans that they might not be adding too much more content to the game at all and just keep it in maintenance mode. Now this is all just opinion, bearing in mind the history of not only Funcom but their publisher Tencent. So agree, disagree, watch the whole video and let's discuss whether or not Conan Exiles has got life to it and what could happen in the future. Could we see a Conan Exiles 2 or is it all just Dune Awakening now? Let's go. So a couple of days ago, this post went out basically saying their plans for the rest of the year and talking about what worked and maybe didn't work last year. They go over all of the events they had, the Age of Heroes, that culminated in a nice little spike of players back in October, but it's quickly subsided. Currently right now, Conan Exiles is yet again on a downward trajectory, not being able to sustain or really effectively grow its player base, despite others in the same kind of genre absolutely smashing it. All the content that Conan Exiles has had over the years, all the attempts to reinvigorate it and get people excited about stupid crap like battle passes and more, it didn't really work or didn't work long enough. That said, Conan Exiles' actual player stats have been relatively at consistent level. I'm not trying to paint a picture of a game that failed. It definitely hit some high peaks and it's definitely had more consistency than some games. But there's no doubt about it, if you were to take a look on its own, the levels of players right now are some of the lowest it's been in a good few years, and the peaks and highs that you once saw with updates and content, they are fast evaporating. Now of course this post doesn't reference all of that, but it does talk about like stuff that did pretty much go right and wrong. Effectively they're saying that they need to work on tech debt. This is a real concept. I've spoken to many game developers before. Games that continue to go on and on, they just basically get to the point where they're so bloaty, kind of buggy and broken, there's not much more you can do unless you're really going to spend a significant amount of time fixing it or just basically leave it as it is. The next update is start to focus on resolving bugs and increasing stability. We will release this update in spring 2025 and they'll let players know what it's going to be like as they get closer. They reckon this will be a key step in addressing the game's core issues and laying a stable foundation for the future. Then they ask for feedback and issues from players and what you basically want fixed. So reading between the lines, and again this is opinion, I'm going to clarify why I think this. I think this is one of the last updates Conan Exiles is going to get. I think very much that they'll do this quality of life update. It could be really substantially good, but after this you'll be lucky to see some tiny little events appear. Nowhere near the type of content cadence they've had in the past. Maybe only one update a year at best. Otherwise I reckon it will be getting towards maybe autumn or the end of the year when Dune Awakening is out and maybe been a success. Then they can confidently go, you know what, that's it, Conan Exiles is done. The only way I can see this changing is if Dune Awakening ends up being a huge flop, and then obviously they'll maybe want to try keeping a game that has a relatively okay revenue stream still working. So why am I saying that? Why is that a big jump? They've clearly just said they're going to work on a bug fix update. They haven't said they're not going to update it in the future. Well, this is where their parent company comes into it. I was one of the first people to break the news about Funcom actually buying or getting bought out by Tencent. This was all done via some of the stuff that was going on when they first got a small chunk of Funcom back in the day, and then they eventually bought the whole lot. And at the time I was one of the lone voices that wasn't actually too worried. Tencent seemed to be on a roll. Yes, Chinese company or not, they'd bought Riot Games, they were investing in lots of gaming companies and lots of new games were being produced and made. Of course, just like a lot of gaming development companies and publishers around the world, it's kind of imploded now. So many of the biggest game studios out there and publishers are basically laying off staff, cancelling projects left, right and centre. Tencent have some of the biggest portfolios going in terms of money they're making from games. Obviously Riot Games and League of Legends, to percentage shares in things like Epic Games and Fortnite and even Baldur's Gate. So they're still making a ton of money from some huge successes over the last few years. But back in the day, I thought this could be a good thing because Tencent would be able to inject a lot more cash into it. Instead, what we did get is a period of inactivity that led me to basically stop covering Conan Exiles. They stopped updating consoles properly for nearly a year, as a myriad of problems and issues arose that they never got around to fixing, particularly on Xbox. If you remember rightly, the gods were disabled for a long amount of time. They got fixed on PC, and then again still no fixes for console for a long amount of time. And then they released a pay DLC that they hyped up, Sipta, but only at the last minute, announcing that it was only going to be on PC and not on console. And that of course was an unfinished, basically empty mess. It took a while to get that actually fleshed out. I haven't been back to it since, so I can't comment on whether or not it ended up being any good, but I don't really see anyone raving about Sipta being something amazing to play. So, back to the point I was saying about studios closing down. Tencent have now gone ahead and started to shut down various different gaming divisions. From studios working in Japan, American studios. In fact, they could have massive problems in America because they've been labelled as a military company, which means they might be on a ban list in the future. Studios based in London, and they've started to cut costs in studios that they've only recently bought. Nightingale obviously is a game that I championed quite hard when it released last year. They've just had literally a big round of layoffs, ultimately because Nightingale just hasn't actually performed as well as it should have, according to obviously Tencent's vision, and that's what's happening here. And this isn't just cutting a small tiny bit of fat. They've literally now got their art director becoming their community manager, a whole host of other stuff that's gone on behind the scenes. They are literally running on a bare bones crew. So is it any wonder that Conan Exiles might end up now starting to shut down a little bit? But the question would be why? If they've been releasing all this DLC and updates for years, if they've been releasing it all these ways that hopefully people can come and enjoy the game, why would they think about slowing things down? Well, the bottom line is the player count. And I do believe they just didn't make enough from their microtransactions and their battle passes, even if they were trying to milk the whales. I got a huge amount of flack when I released a few videos a couple of years ago when their battle pass announcements were being made. I pointed out rightly so that these were basically predatory. Battle passes that have time limits are geared towards making players buy stuff for the fear of missing out. It's my biggest bugbear, or one of them at least, in gaming. I think battle passes can have a place, especially for free games. And I love battle passes that don't run out. Deep Rock Galactic have a bunch that you can dive into whenever you want. But a lot of you disagreed. A lot of the Conan Exiles fanboys jumped to Funcom's defense. And pretty much after I made this video, I got blacklisted by Funcom. And maybe understandably, I didn't get any invites to any new events or taking part in anything, which previously I had been. Funcom invited me to live stream with them at the launch of Sipta, but I turned it down because I kind of had a feeling that it wasn't going to be received very well, and I didn't really like the actual DLC itself. But there was a time that I absolutely loved Exiles and what they were doing. I championed them and promoted them. I said it was a better game than Ark. Any chance I got, I would say that, yep, you should try Conan Exiles out rather than Ark Survival Evolved. But the Battle Pass was the final straw for me. I haven't actually covered Conan Exiles since, other than maybe a few little news videos talking about stuff, and I will probably never play it ever again. So that video with me basically sniping away at it and going over all the stuff. Now it wasn't just me criticising it, you can see from another one of my videos here. Huge amount of people started review bombing Conan Exiles. Been sitting at around 84 to maybe 86%, something like that, positive review scores for a while. And that pretty much dipped to 60% positive reviews, meaning 40% of the player base were unhappy with all of the new implementation of the Battle Pass and the pretty expensive microtransactions when you boiled it down. Almost 2 years to the day, they went and discontinued the Battle Pass, stressing that it was becoming too much of an issue trying to create content. They didn't have enough staff or enough developers to make it. But in reality, no studio is going to stop making stuff for a Battle Pass that's selling. It's because they weren't making enough money. Tencent are not a charity. I think they have absolutely got some leeway with some studios that will give a boost and benefit to. But if you are still repeatedly not bringing in the kind of money they want, they are going to think about actually cutting costs somewhere. And of course, yes, some of their development team, or a lot of them, have been working on Dune Awakening actually for about 4 years now. So you could well imagine last year, what are we doing? Are we carrying on this Battle Pass that we're only getting a few real hardcore fanboys that are buying everything every time? Are we using up vital resources to make this content that only a small tiny fraction of people may be engaging and buying? When we could actually be trying to make Dune Awakening what it needs to be and get that game out to hopefully boost Funcom's overall output and potentially stave off any kind of cutbacks. It seems mad. Funcom were absolutely a money machine. Conan Exiles was their biggest game ever. Janky as it is, it definitely brought in a ton of money, and we could see this from all of the different actual reports, financials that they would have to do. We could see exactly how much money they were making off their DLCs they would pair. The fair DLCs where they would sell them for $10 or $15 or whatever it was, that most people agreed they actually preferred and liked. Conan Exiles was bringing out new updates every quarter, big chunky updates with new content. And this is why it was so good. This is why I championed them. I preferred this method to something like Ark, once a year and being late and delayed. Conan Exiles were relatively on time with what they delivered, and they absolutely focused on making sure all platforms got content at the same time. Again, more or less. But the Age of Sorcery really was the end of all of that. Pretty much promoting the battle passes. The fact was that some of that $10 DLC that you were buying was now being split and sold at triple the price at separate portions in the Bazaar shop. And yes, the battle passes ended up paying for themselves. As long as you never bought anything else, you would regain the amount of coins needed for the next one, just like it is in Fortnite. But there was simply too much splitting of content, and some of the value of the stuff that you would buy from the Bazaar was just not that great. But the point was that people would then be kind of enticed or feeling like they had to go out and buy some more stuff. I'd showed a bunch of times they'd made loads of money before being bought out by Tencent. There was no need to go and nickel and dime their player base, all under the guise that you've got to support them somehow. Well, yes, we've been supporting them for years by buying the $10 DLC. Thankfully, at least the majority of you players who are still here trying to buy it and support Conan Exiles realise that actually you're getting the piss taken out of you. And that can only be the clear answer why they really did stop actually supporting the Battle Pass last year. It's never because they just didn't have enough staff. They absolutely would have found ways to get that content out if it was making them money. But yeah, I wasn't certainly sad about the fact that the Battle Pass got taken away last year. And that did set alarm bells ringing. Again, I was going to think about doing this video last year, but it does seem like they've had a plan in place for a while. They've seen the numbers dipping. They've seen, and more importantly, the whales and the players that are still in the game just not engaging and not buying enough of the crap that they're selling. They reduced their output last year. They gave more time in between their seasons. Again, another sign that maybe they were siphoning off developers to work on June. That's what leads me to the conclusion that this following update really could be one of Conan Exiles' last. So, I think Conan Exile fans, hardcore ones, you probably won't be too sad about this. You play the game daily, you want to see fixes and improvements. This sounds good, and I'm sure in the long run you do want new content to carry on. You still want stuff to be added. I just don't think that's going to happen. They say it themselves, the game was never really meant to be live service, even though they basically treated it as such. They've never announced any kind of plans or roadmap, I don't think, to go ahead and upgrade to Unreal Engine 5. Surely that would be a big improvement to go and help the game's life last a bit longer. And I guess at least no one's had the bright spark idea to just resell it as a remaster like Ark did and basically fuck over their player base even more. So I guess that leaves us with the future. Conan Exiles. If there aren't going to be as much support for the original, could they potentially start working on a sequel? It's going to be a difficult one. When you think about the Exiled lands and the lore and the story, which has never directly been a part of the base lore, like the Exiled lands itself, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong, that people. Everything inside it, different clans, the people, the races, the gods, of course, yes. But what would you have? You can't have the same Exiled lands. It'd have to be a massive time jump where you've got all new clans, maybe all new enemies and creatures. The landscape has been changed perhaps by all the meteorites that have been falling and the years of war. Because otherwise you'd have to have a new Exiled lands. And how are they going to establish that kind of lore? Would it have the same exactly force field that encompasses it all? Would it just simply be a Conan Exiles game, but maybe not so tied into this idea that you are an exile trapped in here with everyone else? It would just be a simple, more Conan style game. No doubt about it, it's had millions of players over its lifetime. Conan Exiles surely should be a brand that carries on in some way, shape or form. It doesn't have to be labelled The Exiles. It could just be Conan, a new age of whatever. Taking all the knowledge they've learned, not releasing stuff quickly because they had to keep their studio afloat, essentially what Conan Exiles was back in the day. With some support still from Daddy Tencent, if June Awakening's going well, maybe we will see another Conan survival game in the future. They're clearly married to it, they've got the IP, so they're going to be doing something with it for sure. But I don't know, I don't think it will be a direct Exile sequel we'll ever see. As said, unless they really are going to do a massive time jump or something to have different types of races, players and creatures and more, running around the same exiled lands. If you don't like that idea, you want them just to carry on adding content, what more can they really add? They've done sorcery, they've done the Age of Heroes, they've pretty much got every kind of mechanic you could think of added to the game. Of course, the one big cry has been that PvP got left behind. When they started really going into the Age of Sorcery, and I would argue even before with some of their free updates, they were definitely catering to the PvE crowd, with PvP being left behind more and more. So could they do stuff with that? Could they make an arena-based game? Could they make a Tarkov-style Conan Exiles combat game? Or would you simply just like some love put into the PvP mechanics? Is there a way to rejuvenate and revitalise? But bearing in mind everything I've said, that Tencent clearly aren't afraid to cut short stuff like battle passes or delay or maybe make updates not arrive nowhere close to the same cadence they had before if they're not really making enough money or their priorities lie elsewhere. It's an interesting topic. I'm not trying to hate like I may have done in the past. I'm a passionate guy, and definitely at times I probably have overdone it a little bit of my criticism of Funcom. I know, just like every other game developer out there, they're beholden to their paylords. Before they were bought out by Tencent, they were reasonably a good little studio. I did have a lot of love for them, honestly. But I'm never going to just keep supporting a game if I see the demise coming, if I see things not happening the way they should be for all players. And essentially, Conan Exiles just started to screw the pooch. So, Conan Exiles. Will we see any big chunky updates in the future? Let me know. I think this is now the slow demise of Conan. I'm going to bookmark this video. Come September, October, I fully expect to see an announcement saying they've got no more plans to update other than maintenance mode. Of course, Dune Awakening is on its way. I am planning to cover that in some way, shape or form. I might be a bit later than everyone else if I'm going to carry on getting blacklisted, but I am intrigued. I'm hoping this is the Funcom that started out so well with Conan for the last few years. I'm hoping it's not going to be ruined by predatory microtransactions. I'm hoping for a lot. I don't know if that would actually end up being true. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be taking a look. And that is still scheduled to arrive at some point early this year. So if we get any news about that, I'll let you guys know. So until next time, Ratbags, I'll see you later.